Great to have you in. You know, generally, if somebody says they're your friend, they wouldn't badmouth you publicly. That's the way it works. So LeBron James, for years, has been very supportive of David Griffin, who is now the New Orleans Pelicans general manager. Very smart guy. We've had him on the show. All my sources in the league trust him and respect him. He's a good guy. He engineered that Anthony Davis trade and did about as well as I've ever seen a general manager do. Losing a star and gaining draft picks and players and building a roster. They got a little break when Zion fell into their lap, but be that as it may, they've done a very good job. He's a very smart guy, and for years, we just thought he and LeBron were tight. LeBron had gone on social media multiple times and said, he's my guy. I can't believe we let him go, blah, blah, blah. Well, David Griffin came out like on Friday, and a story came out where he just dropped an anvil on LeBron James. He said, everything we did was so inorganic and unsustainable in Cleveland, and frankly, not fun. I was miserable. Literally, the amount we won the championship, the moment we did, I knew I was going to leave. There's just no way I was going to pay for any amount of money. He also talked about LeBron James after he won a title as the Akron kid. There wasn't a lot else for him. I don't think he's the same animal anymore about winning, which, by the way, we don't know that to be true. That was just an opinion. I will say this, and none of what he said, if you have any sources in the league, is a big shock. LeBron's become heavy. But it's not a LeBron issue. It was a Barry Bonds issue in baseball. It was a Brett Favre issue in Green Bay. It was a Michael Jordan issue in Washington. It was a Kobe Bryant issue his last 2 or 3 years with the Lakers. Kevin Durant, to me, has become needier with titles, money, and fame. The reality is people get heavier in sports. The more money they have, the more fame they accumulate, and the more rings or trophies they have at home. LeBron's become a heavy hang. He's heavy. Favre in Green Bay at the end was heavy. Barry Bonds at the end in the Bay was heavy. Peyton Manning wasn't heavy in Denver, but John Elway had complained to some close allies, it's a lot of work. Of course it is. So was John Elway. John Elway was a lot of work. Okay, and then after he won a Super Bowl, John had less tolerance for anything because he had the rings, the money, the fame, and he owned Denver. And so Pat Riley told the Lakers, because he knows a lot of people in the building, it's not easy. You're not getting the LeBron we got. We had to deal with 2 LeBrons, pre-title, post-title. He's heavy. You know, there's an old saying with friends that when you build a company, you go on a road trip. You go to Vegas for a weekend. I've gone on rafting trips with guys or golf trips. You're not just selecting your best friends. Do yourself a favor and select the guys that are the best hang. Are they fun to hang with? Can you hang out with this guy for 3 days? Some guys are a riot, but they wear you out after about an hour and a half. LeBron used to be a much better hang. He was aspirational. He was seeking. He didn't have the money. He didn't have the fame. He didn't have the titles. He was seeking. But then you give Kobe, MJ, Favre, Bonds, Peyton, then you give them all the stuff. And they get heavy, and it's mogul stage, and it's different, and there's pressure, and there's burdens, and they're less tolerant of the nonsense. And David Griffin clarified his comments after he made them, but generally we say what we believe initially, then social media piles on, there's blowback, you come and create clarity, but I think David Griffin said what everybody I know has heard. LeBron's different now. I'm not saying he's a bad dad, a bad parent, a bad guy, but it's different. Favre, Bonds, it is. It's always different. When you move to L.A., you know, it can change people. Okay, here's David Griffin clarifying his comments a day later.
The fact that there was so much scrutiny in everything that we did, when I was speaking about being uncomfortable and, quote, being miserable, it was my inability to deal with that media scrutiny. It wasn't the man himself. It was everything that came with a team led by LeBron James. It had nothing to do with being miserable with LeBron. We had and have a very positive relationship.
So that's the clarity part of comments like this. But these are not surprising quotes. People would say the same thing about MJ in Washington. All the kids that grew up idolizing him hated him. Kobe at the end was a lot of work. I mean, Favre in Green Bay. I'm retiring, I'm not. Offense, not changing. Bonds in San Francisco. This is just sports. Used to pay wide receivers. When I was growing up, $80,000 was a salary for Steve Largent. That's what he made. Now it's $80,000 a day. And then when you add titles and fame and legacy and piles of money, and it gets heavy. Being around him is heavy. The expectations, the urgency with LeBron. You got to win now. I mean, the Clippers added 2 stars, and they still feel light. LeBron added AD as a heavy expectations. That's the reality of Favre at the end and LeBron now. Here's Joy with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
So the Patriots have paid Tom Brady a total of $212 million in salary over his 19 seasons. That's probably the best $212 million ever spent in the history of football.
You know, when you think about the NBA contracts, it doesn't sound like
No.
I would have guessed $100 million more.
Right, easily.
Yeah.
Of course, and because it's Tom Brady.
Yeah.
So the Patriots and Brady agreed to a 2-year extension yesterday that keeps him under contract through the 2021 season and will pay him $23 million next year. That came one day after he turned 42 years old, which is crazy because only 6 quarterbacks have completed a touchdown pass after their 42nd birthday. This is the list. George Blanda, Vinny Testaverde, Steve DeBerg, Warren Moon, Doug Flutie, and Earl Morrall.
Now, obviously, Brady gets a ton of credit for this. So does Belichick. Could I say this too, Joy? So does nutrition.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to adjust our idea of what 42 means now. Yes, what old in, and not just in football, because old in basketball is different than old in football also. I mean, the wear and tear on your body, and it's different for hockey and baseball. Each sport is different, but I think that nutrition, recovery, the attention that you pay to your body overall, the structure of the season.
Also, there's less hitting in practice.
Right.
Practice is much.
Yes,
because of the safety concerns. Football practice, they don't do 2-a-days in college like they do. I was talking to a college coach about a week ago. He's like, our practices are so much easier than 7 years ago. And
probably for college, it's a little more frustrating. But in the pros, I mean, we're talking about guys sitting out preseason. Julio Jones not playing the preseason. Why would you play the preseason if you're Julio Jones? The adjustments that have been made to the sport and nutrition and recovery are huge and beneficial in this way. It is interesting, though, 2 more years, because for the past 5 years, we've been talking about when Tom Brady is going to retire. But when are the Patriots actually going to think about?
Well, I think they're going to draft quarterbacks.
Replacing him next year?
No, I mean, I think from this point forward, they drafted one last year, the kid Stidham from Auburn. I think even Tom gets it now. I think Tom understands we're drafting a quarterback every year, Tom. Not with our first pick,
right?
Second or third pick. And I think Tom would have to be realistic and go, oh, I get it. When I'm 74 doing this show, if you bring a new guy in to fill in for me, I'm going to get it.
You're not going to give him a hard time? Not going to send him out of town?
I get the evolution of the chair.
But it does seem less dramatic that he had Jimmy Garoppolo sent out of there now, considering that he just signed another 2-year extension. That was way premature. Yeah. So Andrew Luck has been dealing with a lingering calf injury in training camp, which has kept him out of practice, and he apparently won't be back anytime soon. Frank Reich confirmed that Luck will be out leading up to Thursday's preseason opener at Buffalo. Not a big deal if you're Andrew Luck, but Luck hopes he'll be good to go once the regular season starts next month, and he is a bit worried. He told Peter King, that's certainly the goal at times. I do worry about it. It can be frustrating, the arc of an injury, whether it's a big surgical one or something you're rehabbing through, but no, because I've improved. Maybe I'm not improving as fast as I want, and missing things is no fun. It eats at you. But I do know at the end of the day, if I'm getting the most out of myself, if I'm being the best that I can that day, then that's what I need to do. Yeah. He did win Comeback Player of the Year last year after missing the entire 2017 season with a shoulder injury, and then, of course, he had the lacerated kidney in 2016.
Joy, for our TV audience, he does look bigger. I mean, there's been some inactivity, but I will say what he's built around his injuries, like he is a bigger quarterback.
Well, he's a bigger guy to begin with. It's not so much him being in shape that I'm concerned about. There's a saying, if you go into the season injured, you're going to leave the season injured. Right. And that's just kind of what has become a norm for Andrew Luck. He's just not, it feels like he's never 100%. Right. Which is unfortunate because we want to see the full potential of what, especially this team, how they performed last year. Taking another step up is largely on Andrew Luck's shoulders. And if he isn't 100%, I don't know. This situation concerns me.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of it. Again, part of me, there used to be some urgency with the preseason. There is so little urgency now that whenever a veteran quarterback doesn't play, I'm like, I wonder if there's like 15% of this is we just don't want him in those games.
Well, and he shouldn't be. I mean, maybe to get a little loose, get some connection with the receivers. But if the problem is he's not practicing. Yeah. That's what concerns me. Playing in the preseason game is one thing and it's fully understandable, but not practicing is a bit more concerning. And finally, The Warriors have locked up Draymond Green with a max 4-year extension worth $100 million. He was set to be a free agent next summer, and according to Shams Charania, Draymond can opt out after 3 seasons. If he stays all 4 years, he will be a free agent through 2024. Klay Thompson's new deal also takes him through 2024. And Draymond spoke to Tim Reynolds of the Associated Press and says the Warriors aren't going anywhere. He said, I think everybody thinks it's kind of the end of us, but that's just not smart. We're not done yet. But yeah, I hear a lot of that noise. It's the end of a run and all that jazz. I don't see it happening, though. We'll be back.
Steph, Klay, Draymond, Kayvon Looney, Bob Myers, Steve Kerr, and a trade asset potentially in D'Angelo Russell. I'm not bailing on them. I'm sorry.
I don't think that they're a championship team, but they are going to make trouble for someone in the playoffs. I just think that they needed Kevin Durant. Like, it obviously showed.
Yeah.
I mean, Kawhi Leonard basically carried that team to a championship last year. You can call it, emotional fatigue. They obviously lost Klay Thompson as well, but I'm not fully prepared to be all in on the Warriors, although they're not going to be. Everyone thinks it's a disaster and they're going to be terrible, and that's just not the case. The Warriors now owe Steph, Klay, and Draymond $436 million.
That's a lot of money.
It is, but it's worth it. I mean, think of the run. Like, part of it is what you're being paid for what you already did, and it's not that it's not earned.
That Tom Brady contract feels like
I know.
He's a backup tight end.
The contract, that was his entire career, $212 million.
Different sports.
It is.
It's not.
There's no comparison, but it is crazy when you look at the numbers.
Yeah, Joy with the news.
Well, that's the